feel like they're two different things. As much as I like the idea of brevity in terms of that, but I do think when the opportunity agency, because again, to me, those go hand in hand, because you can provide the opportunity, but they've got to take the agency to get
Take
it done.
advantage of it, yeah.
Right.
What about if we add the closing gaps and removing barriers to the make data-driven decisions part? We will use evidence-based practices and student data to inform instruction.
I like that.
Enhance student outcomes.
Continually improve our learning community by closing.
Or even after enhanced student outcomes, remove barriers and close gaps, and continue to improve our learning community.
Okay.
That sounds okay? Reese, what do you
I like
think?
that, okay, the data driven, I think that,
I like that too, and then to
Yes, to continually improve.
Our learning community. Can you read
to
it back to us?
continually improve, I like that.
Okay, reading back, we will use evidence-based practices and disaggregated student data to inform instruction, enhance student outcomes, close gaps and remove barriers, and close gaps and remove barriers to continually improve our learning community. As far as we need to go.
Yeah, I think,
That's what it starts to get.
yeah, I think that connects.
But it
You
sounds
have
good.
two ands, I think.
Yeah,
Okay, okay, all right.
I think that connects to the lead too, around the continuous learning, and then
Okay.
that connects that to that continuous.
So then number 3, we are adding agency to that heading. And are we keeping the KQ-COMS version of number 3? Did we decide on, do we wanna add the historically marginalized populations, or is that already covered in other areas?
I think it's covered in our language.
I guess, okay. Are we okay to move on then?
that was the original description, different header.
Right.
All right. Number 4, foster a safe, supportive, and inclusive environment.
So we're removing a historically marginalized population.
Well, that was the question. Are we keeping that? And if so, are we suggesting we keep it aligned to promote student leadership and accountability and agency? Or should that be moved to making data-driven decisions, which talks about removing barriers and gaps? I guess it's the discussion point.
Well, I like the closing the gaps and removing barriers, and then the continuous learning opportunities, I like that on the data driven decisions, so that I support.
So the question is, with the historically marginalized populations, are you wanting to consider keeping that aligned to the data piece? Do we wanna move that to the data portion, or are you proposing we keep it with the promote opportunity and agency? Do you feel strongly about keeping that phrase?
No,
No?
I think, I don't feel strongly about it, I would like to have it there. I think it could be addressed as we engage in the work of equity and looking at our disaggregated data, based on the disaggregated data, making those decisions. If we see that that we have a historically marginalized population, we can address it.
That's
But
what
I
it's
do
at,
think,
data
I do think that it calls it out in a different way. In particular around the space of belonging.
Any other discussion there?
If there happen to be larger gaps that needed to be addressed, if we call out this specific group, are we putting ourselves into a situation where we've got to direct resources to a group where our data doesn't support that level of, right? It's not that, there's a whole bunch of groups that we could call out.
And
That's
it's
all I'm
one
saying.
group, it doesn't, it's not
Right.
specific to anyone. I
Right,
mean,
but that's my point. If we're talking each and every, and we're using data-driven, to close the gap, I mean, we want to be able to direct resources to close whatever our priority gaps are, as opposed, wherever they are. we've all, I mean, we're, and it,
Whether it's a marginalized group or not, we
That's right.
wanna close gaps, I
Right.
think is what he's saying, so are we pigeonholing ourselves if we include that?
right, if we look at the data here and now.
My opinion is we should have historically marginalized groups, but the majority is for it.
I like the emphasis on especially, and then are they considered historically underperformed populations?
But then the question is, well, are we focused on something that was happening 30 years ago, or are we focused on what's happening now?
What's happening now?
Right.
But historically marginalized groups is like you're actually addressing the gap, because you're closing it by focusing on a group that has been marginalized, like the needs have not been addressed.
Right, but
And
what if
so-
we find that that's not what the data supports, that their needs have been addressed, they're showing, and we have another gap? Maybe it's multilingual learners, right? In today's, I mean, it could be that the group today that really is going to be the concern moving forward are multilingual learners, right? And so, that's my only point
It
is,
could shift, it could change.
right, which is why
That's
should
why
we
you
call
should-
out?
That's why you should say historically marginalized.
That's why you should say gaps as identified.
Can you live with it, the way that they're recognized? That's the question I would ask you, can we live with that?
Okay.
So, we can live with not including the historically marginalized population.
Make it sound like that.
Yeah.
But they
it's
are
hard.
included.
I just,
If the
I mean,
gap, if
Well,
the data
not including
driven.
that phrase,
The
not
phrase.
including that phrase, knowing that when we say we're looking at disaggregated data, that is what we're doing, we're evaluating performance across subgroups. So can we live with not explicitly stating, especially for historically marginalized populations?
I just think again, just kind of pigeonholes us to that one population, and then what about the other populations that may have those challenges that don't see themselves recognized in our community? You know what I'm saying?
I just wanna say, okay, I'm sorry.
You know, I just don't wanna disinclude them, I think that's a fair word, but I don't want them to feel that other groups are left out, even if, and I see your point, because you're going back historically as well, and it makes sense, but then it's also, now you're putting it in print on paper, and, you know, I think it could just create a conflict, I
So,
think it's a group, I think that.
so just overall with the process, like, you know, the way I see this, like I mentioned earlier in the beginning, is we're working off of the document that Gomez presented. KQ made some changes to the document that Mr. Gomez presented, which I felt like was sanitized. Significantly, I actually didn't like it. I tried to come in and add in some changes, and the historically marginalized piece was kind of me trying to add in a call out that I felt like was specific to an issue we have around not addressing historically marginalized populations. And so I guess it's just navigating this space between the sanitized version that to me was like not very courageous as an equity-centered district, to now this another version that's trying to kind of engage in specifically addressing a call out. Like, we do have historically marginalized populations that we have not addressed.
Hence your language, especially
Yes.
this.
I think.
So, not that you're discounting the other, but noting like especially this group of students who have historically.
See, whereas you have that sentiment of, you feel like especially is creating more of a sense of positivity. That word especially could, for some groups, feel like they're not included, or they're not as important. So I kind of see both sides of the argument here. And so, because I know that when we review disaggregated data, that we are looking for, you know, making sure that there's parity and that our students are performing across subgroups. just because I can also see how maybe some people might feel like they're not being included with us saying especially. So, I think Gasper,
I think I'm.
you were saying you feel more comfortable leaving that out specifically.
I do.
It's in, okay, so we're gonna leave the especially for historically marginalized population.
I think, like you said, we're still gonna capture the decentralized, is that the right word? No, disaggregated, sorry,
Right.
disaggregated data.
Okay.
Analysis.
So, almost there. Number, we're looking at number 4, foster a safe and supportive, foster a safe, supportive, and inclusive environment. We did that one. Okay, number 5, cultivate a culture of excellence.
Which is number 6 on mine.
This is number 6. So is this where we're adding district community? And then we have the, in the addition, while addressing systemic inequities that limit access to excellence. Discussion there.
I just don't, here in Gwinnett, I don't see the systemic inequities. I mean, I was at Phoenix yesterday, and, I mean, there's, the CTAE, awards, you know, students of the year, I mean, if you can show me where, you know, less than 80% of our award, yesterday's, I mean, gosh, you're not seeing
Yes, you are.
people, okay. I- It's
It
not in the
exists,
data.
and we've seen, it
And
is
there's
in the
some
data.
like,
It is in the data.
for example, there is some data around, and again, I don't know if this is like nationally, because I haven't looked at it nationally, but one of the things I've been looking at is like our tribunal referrals. Black students are disproportionately, like overwhelmingly disproportionately represented as students who refer to tribunals, and that is like on the district website. And again, I don't know if there's a correlation between Black students and brown students are top 2 highest demographics, but that is fact on our GCPS website, that Black students are disproportionately represented when compared to other groups for students referred to tribunals. And I don't know if, and research suggests that when you look at like the school to prison pipeline, it suggests that Black and brown people in general are represented at larger numbers in the justice system, and it is attributed to systemic issues.
But is that the case and the truth here in Gwinnett? It's the part that, because there are, that race is definitely a factor. That's not the only factor. You've got economic factors, you've got other family factors. You've got
That's a system.
Well, inside of our system is the question. We're talking about what we can address inside of our system. I don't think you can necessarily prove inside of Gwinnett County how we go about doing things, professional development, the various things we've done in terms of promoting diversity and in leadership and in teaching and on and on and on, that you can. I just have a hard time. I mean, we're if we focus on the excellence of Gwinnett over the years, the national awards and everything, we are not your typical school system. And you and I had this conversation, I don't know, a year and a half ago, maybe a couple years ago, about controlling what we can control. I mean, there are aspects that are beyond our control. That doesn't make us systemically flawed. So that's where I would push back and say, what are you seeing that we're doing that is creating this system that in Gwinnett County, right now, with our policies and procedures?
Could I say?
Let me,
Wait. How long you been on this board? Okay.
I don't need drama. What
You see, this isn't drama, this is me expressing, you see, I can't even express myself.
Can I take the conversation? Let me, just one question, right? Because right now, we're kind of going back and forth on the verbiage systemic inequities. But the big picture is limiting access to excellence. Could it be the case that it's not just inequities that limit access? Would it make more sense to use a more general term where we're addressing obstacles that limit access to excellence? I'm wondering if we can find a less charged term.
Sure.
And we're still speaking to the point that there are limitations to access. Not to say that there aren't systemic inequities, but my thinking is there are more than just systemic inequities that are limiting access to excellence. So should we use a more general term, is my question.
I think the word systemic is real, it is real polarizing, it's real charging, and I also think too that some of what Dr. Teresa had at the very end, some of access to excellence is somewhat picked up in given number 2, and continually improve our learning community which means we're using data to look to make improvements. We know we're not perfect, and that continual improvement it's our hope to address these inequities that exist that Dr. Teresa is talking about that potentially could limit access to being great. So I kind of like where you're going with your correction, with your suggestion. But can we read it out again? Did we?
So, and I don't know if obstacles is the right word, but I'm trying to get to this sense of there are a number of things that are limiting access to excellence. Systemic inequities is a part of that, but maybe there are other things that are not characterized as systemic inequities. So do we want to use a more general term such as maybe obstacles, for example? Is my question to the leader.
Possibly. Obstacles, is there another word for obstacles?
My statement that I originally was trying to say is that we, as long as I have been on this board, every month, there is some presentation that indicates systemic inequities.
But are there other
That's all I was
things in
going to
addition
say.
to that, Teresa, is what I'm asking? Are there other things
And we
in addition to
captured
that,
and we captured that,
limiting
and we
access
captured
to
that,
excellence?
and we captured that throughout the document. We said gaps, we talked about access and opportunity in general. This again is kind of like the same conversation around historically marginalized, kind of bringing in some little bit more specificity. But again, maybe the specificity isn't something that, the board wants. I was trying to be more specific, just like historically marginalized are very similar to historic inequities. They absolutely exist here, and we learn that every month that they exist here. And I think that's something that continuously is the work of our board, is to make sure that we are ensuring that we are looking at the data and using the data to be able to make the decisions that ensure each and every child has what they need to be successful and thrive. And the work of equity is part of the work that all of us are doing. And when we see gaps in the data, that's an inequity. Especially when we see that there are historically marginalized groups that continue to be overrepresented in certain areas, in discipline, in not access to AP classes, in different environments in their schools, in different experiences with their counseling services. Like, all of these are inequities that in fact can impact the life of a child. And I was calling that out in specifically there in the commitment section. But again, like whatever y'all decide.
You were saying, Rachel?
I was just thinking like something along the lines of like external factors that limit students' excellence. So things outside of our control, things that students bring with them to the classroom, things that teachers bring with them, educators bring with them to the classroom, like those factors. And I don't know what that correct term is, the one that comes to mind, or
what about just
Maybe-
factors that limit access to excellence? I mean, that's, to me, that's what our job is. There's a gap, we address the factors, we do what we can. I mean, there are some things, there are gonna be some things outside of our control. But that doesn't mean we can't do something to help address that, but.
And
What
that's-
about factors of holistic supports? Like, I don't think we use that, but we often talk about community schools as holistic supports. So when you think about Give Center, it's like holistic supports. So maybe like factors and holistic supports. Not in one sentence, I'm saying use it where maybe we can have that discussion.
Dr. Bolton, you first.
No, I was just saying, so I go back to your comment of helping like remove obstacles. That, you know, there could be things that are out of our control. Maybe a child is in a single family home and living in poverty. We can't, I wish we could write a check and make sure everybody wasn't, you know, dealing with that. But if there's like a parent night and there's no transportation, what can we do to remove the obstacle so the parent who wants to be there to enroll the child in the AP course, we can do it without the parent being physically there. We can do a Zoom, right? You're removing an obstacle and a gatekeeper, if you will, of things that may stop kids from reaching their full potential. I like the way you originally had phrased it with removing those obstacles or barriers, whatever it is that, you know, but here's the other thing I wanted to go back to. Your language is so good and rich, but it's not in the 6th to 8th grade reading level that we're trying to accomplish. You know what I mean? The holistic this and that, or I don't remember what the term was, but I know what you mean. The wraparound services, but to find the language for a typical reader, if you look at the newspaper, it's written between a 6th and 8th grade grade levels. Yeah.
Okay,
What about while addressing factors that limit access?
Yeah, that's what I was, yeah, because external or internal, doesn't matter. If it's a factor, if there's a factor we can address that helps do what we're trying to do, then we want to address it.
does our comms team have a suggestion, like just factors, obstacles, any feedback? Are they both clear?
Well, factors is not negative. Obstacles
Right.
are
Barriers and
negative.
obstacles.
That was what I was
and
gonna
Yeah.
say. But we want to address, so obstacles, because the original intent were the inequities, which is negative. So, I mean, with obstacles, you're clear. With factors, it could be anything. So it's just about what we're going to address, things we don't have control over,
Right. That's where I was going.
paychecks and
Yeah.
such, things we do have control over.
So factors.
Factors,
Just across the board.
okay. Everybody okay with factors? All right. I think that gets us to the end, or we have a final, I think that's the end. We have a final paragraph. I don't see bold, Teresa, did you add something there?
Oh, yeah, it is the second sentence. Yeah.
stuff in the middle, we're already saying each and every. I mean, that's, yeah, each and every. That's why we adopted that phrase, because you can look at those 5 that you've listed and say, well, there's 3 others that aren't listed. That someone might, but if we keep it to each and every is each and every.
It's all encompassing.
Can we put a period in pride? Put a period in pride? It's ended there.
Can you read what you?
We stand firm in our unwavering dedication to ensuring that each and every student has the opportunity to belong, succeed, and thrive.
The only other thing is number 7 on my document, did we talk about that, or what do y'all see that? Feedback on that?
Is it? No, it's not. I'm sorry. We deleted
No.
your number 8 for sure around.
Okay, so for number 7 was around ensure inclusive and culturally responsive learning. We added the word inclusive to the foster a safe, supportive, and inclusive
Right.
environment. So does it make sense to maybe add the verbiage from your number 7 up to add that to our number 4?
Not all of it, some of it. Yeah, some of it, I think. should
Right,
be.
is there some parts of it that we wanna pull up into number 4?
Can I just say what I was trying to capture again was like a specific call out that like specifically addressed the curriculum around culturally responsive curriculum. Or supporting culturally responsive, practices,
Could we name the AKS and what is the name with the, do we want to name the curriculum here?
I would.
no,
I
because
wouldn't
it could
name-
change, the curriculum name could change, but the practice around cultural responsiveness is always around, regardless, and we all have culture, it's not specific to just any group, everyone has culture, but it's like showing, like, the board saying that we have a commitment to like honoring culture, but it's a specific call out where it's not embedded in something else, but it's specifically, it's saying, we're committed to culturally responsive teaching. That's kind of where I'm trying to,
Okay, got it.
what, the suggestion.
I wonder if that is better aligned to commitment number 1, world-class learning.
That makes sense, world class and culturally relevant.
That's just a question, because I feel like number 4 is more about the supportive and the environment, the culture, but I hear you saying you're
Right.
talking about curriculum, so I wonder if that can be.
Well, and she did have culturally relevant instruction in number 1.
Did we
and-
add that?
And we went to push it down to the other, but maybe you're right, we get rid of the other by that inclusion in 1, like she had originally, and get rid of number 7. Because the inclusion, like you said, is included elsewhere.
But it doesn't capture the teaching curriculum, I think that's important somewhere, because remember, this also drives direction.
What about number 4, for police? Learning should, let them respect, no.
Oh, I could see that here too somewhere. Yes. Oh, it was there, we deleted it. But putting it back, I think, or something.
I
Which
said
one?
number
Number
4
1?
and I walked it back, but you're saying where? I'm
So,
going in
under
between the 2
number 4,
documents.
at the end of the sentence, it says,
Commitment.
with culture responsive and affirming curriculum and instruction.
True.
That captures the instruction, I do think we need my suggestion again.
Yeah, I think we decided to try to move it to a commitment.
But we didn't, we're taking it out.
So maybe somehow integrate that in commitment number 1.
Number 4 is
Number 4, is where it was originally, it was just said a different way, but.
I think it fits
So
in number 4.
you're talking about core belief number 4?
Yeah, I
So
think
my
Yeah.
question is, are we thinking about pulling that piece from core belief number 4
Right.
and adding it to commitment number 1, no?
No, I think she's saying
Okay.
removing removing number 7 and adding, now correct me if I'm wrong.
Removing 7 from commitment.
I still don't think it belongs in beliefs, because it's a commitment, and so the question is,
Well, then
does
we
it
have
need
to
its
go
own?
back to the original number 1 for
Right,
commitments thing.
right.
Yeah.
That is part of the commitment to world-class learning for global readiness is cultural relevant instruction.
And I think it could be a belief. I think there could be some, connection between some of these where beliefs
So-
and commitments are connected.
Well, they are, because again, I think learning
Right.
should reflect and respect every student.
I-
How we do
I'm
that is
just saying, I think
culturally,
we did
yeah.
So, deleting 7, number 7 under commitments, going back to Dr. Therese, your version of number 1 under commitments, and then my additional recommendation is to cut it as with or through culturally relevant instruction or curriculum, period, and remove the and global competence.
Yeah, culturally relevant.
Yeah.
So read,
Yeah, then that captures.
read all of number 1, you said
Okay.
commitment.
Yes, provide world-class learning for global readiness. We will create an educational environment that nurtures creativity, critical thinking, and personalized learning experience to help, to help students navigate and lead in an interconnected world. Originally, we stopped there, but now we can say with or through a culturally relevant curriculum, period,
Or instruction.
or
Yeah.
instruction,
Yeah,
and then delete number 7.
through culturally relevant instruction, period.
Yeah.
And then maybe Dr. Therese, can we remove personalized learning because if it's culturally relevant, it personalizes it in a way.
Yep. Yep.
Let me type that before I forget.
So you're gonna make all these edits and send it back to us? to
Yes,
final-
I do want to not read through all of them, 2 for me, for my own safety, and then we will adopt these track changes and turn it around to you.
Personalized, individualized,
They just said they were gonna remove personalized.
and well, that,
Do you see that as being the same or no?
individualized, again, the teacher has back on, speaks to student ability, and then the differentiated instruction that teachers are doing, actually meeting the needs on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
But again, I don't know if I'm stepping too far in the weeds, but I know literally the language for example, qualified student as having, like, they require individualized instruction, and then also,
Yeah.
our teachers are doing the differentiated instruction in the classroom, so if a kid's not getting a concept on day 1, then next day,
Well, it's
teachers
already
are.
happening, I don't see any, I'm not opposed to including it, if it's a commitment, that means you're probably already on a written commitment anyway.
I wanna
But I would
echo-
prefer individualized over personalized, I don't know why that feels different to
Yeah.
me.
I agree, but can I support what you said? I think, Rachel, that is so important around the educator's perspective. We have IEPs, we know that you have to do scaffolding, which also includes like the differentiated learning. And I think for teachers, they get that we have a commitment around differentiated learning, so we can use it. It's nowhere in this document, but I actually like that you brought up that word, because I do think that the success of the individual student is captured in the, learning that is, differentiated. So if we can add that word somewhere, I don't know where, but I do think that teachers would appreciate
Or-
that that's consistent with what they know to be true in the classroom.
And I think the title is specialized, learning or. I don't know, I go back to the differentiated instruction.
turn this
capture,
around as soon as possible.
can I just ask you to capture somewhere what Rachel's statement was around that? I think that that's very important. I don't know where we can look at things, but if you can capture that somewhere. Is that okay?
Pardon me?
Is that okay? We can try to capture what you suggested.
Yeah, so like specialized or learning or individualized learning.
Any final thoughts here, guys? Thank you so much.
Thank you
Appreciate
all.
guys being with us. I don't know if he was planning to stay the whole day or if they're needed, Dr. Taylor, but we're gonna turn it over to you for the transition plan update. If you want Kate.
Yeah, no, they're welcome to,
Welcome to stay.
welcome to stay.
We'll hang out for a little bit longer. I think that we're interested in the superintendent update.
Oh,
And
okay.
just an FYI, as we're on our way out, we're gonna grab a couple of pictures so you see us shooting. This is all content showing you all in action, so you should be a part of those photos.
Need to get some release forms, I guess.
Do you agree to be on our social media page?
Yeah, I'll just never see it.
We'll have to see some screenshots.
We're set to go.
Is this
but-
new?
No, this is,
This is what's on.
yeah.
Okay, you.
Yeah, no, you know, you're teeing it up well. So we're set to go to an hour and a half, but I think we're gonna actually be able to make up a little bit of time in the next two segments, barring any questions. So what's being presented to you right now, which is why we allocated enough time to allow for questions if they exist. The plan is just the same, but if you recall, when I first shared the plan with you, we also talked about providing ongoing updates in terms of where we are. So that's what this represents. This just kind of gives a snapshot of the objectives that were outlined in the original plan. So none of these objectives have changed. I won't walk through line by line, but we're envisioning some version of just a quick snapshot that we can also publish on the website, just to also, in that space of transparency, the things that we kind of set out to do during this transition window, that we're monitoring progress and that we're communicating current status. There are a few edits that need to be made. Of course, yesterday, this is as of, I think this may have been like as of Monday of this week, so there's some things that aren't reflected. Obviously, one of the big pieces is now that the board has selected the search firm, we'll make some modifications to, maybe some of the timeline components. Also, we were, with the budget being passed, that's not reflected as completed on here. So there are a couple of things that we'll edit before we get it live. Wanted to put this in your hand, to kind of look through, provide space for some feedback, some questions. So while you're thumbing, there's a couple of things I just want to just zoom out right quick and share. Really have been, first and foremost, just so appreciative of your responsiveness, in terms of kind of real-time feedback. We end up talking, several times a week, but it's been so informative, showing gaps that exist, not only in maybe spaces and things that you're not aware of, but clear gaps of where we could better communicate and, maybe front load some information for you. And those conversations, I think, have spilled over, been just so incredibly happy with the level of collaboration that's existed particularly across executive cabinet. You'll hopefully see some of that reflected in the work that we're going to be doing tomorrow and some of those presentations. But all of that was born from, the desire to create what are we going to be doing in this window. But it's resulted in such great conversations and such great work. There's some pretty significant pivots that we're going to be communicating that were exposed that are necessary for right now. So really, I think, if there's one change that has happened over this, it's been 33 days. I'm not counting it. I just happen to know it's 33 actual work days since I've been in this position. Initially, we were thinking, we would kind of capture maybe some short and long-term recommendations. We're still doing that. So the idea behind some short-term recommendations would be able to give, incoming superintendents some low-hanging fruit, like these, and some ideas and context behind that. Long-term recommendations are spaces that definitely need to attend to as a district. They're just not things that, from a timing or from a scope perspective, we can do right now. But we actually added a third bucket, and that third bucket are some immediate pivots of things that we've just discovered over these past couple of weeks that both give us, I think, some immediate bang for the buck, but they're the things that just make sense, right? And we've been able to expose, a lot of that over these past couple of weeks. As I mentioned, the timeline, we're making the adjustment now that you have selected a search firm. We're going to try to accelerate some of those areas of gaps in that short and long-term recommendations. We really feel like that would help you as you're thinking about, going through the experiences of candidates. If there are things that we've kind of identified, or these are definite areas that we need to address, thought it might be good data for you, as you're going through the interview process, or even when you're, interfacing with Alma, as you start to think about, here's some characteristics, or here's some skill sets, or here's some experiences that, we want this person to embody because of some things that we've already identified as challenges. So let me pause there for a second and then we'll open up.
So this is an exhibit that we can have as part of our process, is what you're suggesting.
100%.
And I do have a point around adding underneath engage stakeholders and build trust. A status update could be also what our relationship with, I don't know if we want that public or not, but just say public BOE, social media engagement, presence, or something that I think that's a win, a check mark that like could also build community trust and engagement, and that's just a suggestion there.
No, and whatever, even if it doesn't get captured in this, now remember, this is also to kind of guide, part of the focus of this, going back to that initial purpose. So just to be able to demonstrate the board's involvement and kind of close monitoring and accountability for what the district is doing in this interim space, right? So that's part of this. And, but on that website where we're capturing all this, we can highlight specific things, even if it doesn't get folded into this document. We tried to keep this document in terms of these objectives is the same as the one that I gave you.
Right.
This is just the update of where we are so far. And, we plan to do these on some regular cadence throughout the entire window of the
Okay.
period.
So my next question is, what is this? What's this?
These are stock photos, I think this is downtown Orange.
Yeah, that's the county courthouse.
You don't got this center page, change that picture. I think we should change it to a school, like, like a downtown, what if you live in Lilbro in a Snellville, or, anyway.
So excluded.
Okay.
I'm not.
I mean, a
this
school,
is,
I think a school would be.
I do want to thank,
small thing.
obviously, the team has really worked hard on developing, and you'll see some of that work tomorrow in terms of long-term recommendations. Really, really excited about that work. Our comms team, was able to throw this together. This is not my strength. I don't pretend. I'm not creative. I do good to make sure that my tie matches, my outfit. And I don't even know if it does. Just close enough. And I'll do it. I'll try it. I'll try the best that I can. But on that update page where we're capturing all this information, I think we can, highlight certain things. This little chart at the bottom will be on there. And then, we'll keep that as kind of a running, updated, just symbol of as we start to complete things. But I know you had a question.
So I have a question that kind of goes to timeline. Because when we first started having these discussions, it was, hey, let's take our time, let's do this right, let's find the right guy. Then when it came to the search firm, or
Right
right person. Then when it came to the search firm, all of a sudden I felt like it accelerated and compressed, and all of a sudden we gotta have this search firm by this date, because they gotta do this by this date, and then we gotta have a superintendent by July.
You actually tee up very well. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Well, let me not interrupt you. I'm
One
sorry.
last thought on that. And then last night when we were talking about it in the board meeting, Adrian said, reaffirmed, because again, I was myself just a little befuddled in terms of, are we taking our time to find the right person, or is it an accelerated timeline? And then Adrian said, look, we're committed to doing this at the right time, so I wanted to have that and figure out what that discussion is, especially with Dr. Ravosa being here, because with all of his consulting, the one question I'd like to start with is there a right time to hire a superintendent? Because.
Yes.
Good question.
Because if now and through the summer is not the right time, can we, even though we've decided we're gonna go with Alma, can we create the timeline that says when we engage, because then because what,
Your
so.
question has, first of all, it's a great question. It's one that school boards grapple with. There is a hiring season, I'll be honest with you. It's usually announce it in December, and then it's a January, February, March, and sometimes into April, contract negotiation, July 1. And then up north, it's August 1 usually,
Right.
start dates.
Right.
That's usually the case. Now, you selected the vendor. That doesn't mean the vendor has to start today.
Right.
If you choose, the vendor can start with, especially if you want to do a prolonged community engagement, the company can start with some community engagement, even behind the scenes, and allowing you each to be the face of that engagement. There's a couple of different ways. And the firm you spoke to, if you give the staff direction, can begin to look at what those options might look like.
And we talked about this last night because, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No.
We talked about this last night, and I mean, we're running right up against the end of school and summer vacations. And
Parents
what
are
is,
not gonna
what
be-
is our participation gonna look like? It's gonna be basically nothing. Parents don't wanna do,
Yeah.
do Zoom meetings sit on the beach or at Disney World. So this is, I think our timing too, and I think if we bump
Actually,
even out.
it could be a good time for some students.
Okay, can
But I think,
so
yeah,
this,
it
well,
might be,
this is what I was
less
going to
engagement.
say, because I think that your initial question tees up very well what we're talking about in terms of the superintendent next steps. This is modifiable at any level, right? And so I think that was really one of the messages. Just want to make sure that we got clear. We're going to be responsive to the timeline that you want to do that. We can accelerate if necessary. So the end date, which is why those additional phases, they had kind of the best thinking at the time. This is an accordion though. We can stretch and we can compress as necessary. That's not problematic. What really would help, and where I wanted to see if there were any questions about this document or elements in spaces that you feel like as a board. Really want you attending more to this right now. That's really where I was going, with sharing this. If there aren't, the conversation that we're going to get into about the next steps and timeline, it's going to be connected to this as well, and we can make the adjustments on this to make sure that we have to have a plan. Like and I said, I was glad when this came up. I don't like to answer anything without some type of idea of starting points. We're going to make the amendments to this that this doesn't drive your process. I guess maybe that's the best way to say it. Your process drives what this is going to look like and what it contains. So, if there are no immediate questions about this, what I asked George to do was just kind of talk through high level what, from our perspective, not the search firm, the next steps, and then engage in a conversation that gets back to your question about, all right, so now that we know what the next steps are going to be, do we want to start, penciling in or thinking about timeline, and then we can kind of go back and forth between those last two topics. Does that make sense? Good.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. Let me say that I believe there are 4 immediate steps that we need to take. There may be 5, there may be 3, but I'm settled on 4. First and foremost, we had promised, or at least I had promised the firms that after the vote, I would personally contact them to let them know yes or no, and I believe the one that we chose, we followed that up with a formal letter congratulating them and telling them that we chose them. That's step number 1. Step number 2 is we will need to set up a meeting for what I call a meeting for terms. We need to finalize the terms of the contract. What is it that you want the chosen firm to actually do? This will go into Mr. Knudsen, the timeline, the community involvement, the surveys, all those terms. What I am suggesting for step number 2 is that you allow staff to negotiate those terms on your behalf with complete and constant communication between the superintendent and the board, so that we can negotiate those terms with some privacy to it, for lack of a better word, you know? Step number 3 is once the terms are completed, then we will have to sign the contract. I think that there's probably an interest in the board to do that in some type of transparent live session. And then number 4, simply get to work, right? Those are the 4 big buckets, as we see them today. But please let me know if there's too many buckets, or there's not enough buckets. And I think, Dr. Taylor, I will turn it back over to you or to Mr. Knudsen to engage in some of the details of each bucket.
Mr. Knudsen, I mean,
I'm sorry, I thought he had brought up the,
oh,
I
I
think
mean,
you meant the question that you posed,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
right before, and I was trying to, actually, I'm glad you asked it, that's what I was trying to cut you
I
off for,
mean-
because I felt like that
Yeah.
bled well into that next segment. But to revisit the question that you posed about,
Right.
okay, so from a timeline perspective, and thoughts on timeline, because that's gonna that's going to dictate when we start to execute those 4 steps.
So I guess, and the reason that I wanted to ask that question in this context is just to get kind of the feedback. I feel like, we talked about this a little bit, came out in our meeting, last night, as well, that there's, in our work session, that there seems to be an overall settling that's taking place district-wide. We've got to get this next piece right. And so I would just like to know, in terms of how kind of a consensus in terms of what the board's thinking, as in reference to if there's an ideal timeline. Now, if we did not have a suitable interim, it'd be different. But I think,
right,
that-
so, you and I have been through this before, so I'm gonna share a little bit about this process and like lessons learned. I've shared that there have been some lessons learned, from the last process. And in retrospect, I wish we could have done things differently. And I'm gonna say that everything that I wish we would have done differently, we are doing. From the search firm process to community engagement in an intentional way, to really making sure that we're making unbiased, objective decisions, and not focused on a specific. And speaking for myself, I was very focused on an equity-centered superintendent. That was sort of like a really high-level part for me. All the questions I asked in my interview process was equity. And my lesson learned is equity is still a center focus for me, and finding someone who's conscious around that. However, the character piece is really important, and I'm really interested in that. But these are just lessons learned from my experience. Having said all of that, in terms of the timeline, I believe that we should take our time, considering we have Dr. Taylor, who's effectively kept the train on the track, and working through this community trust building in the process of Dr. Taylor, the Alma Group, with building trust from engaging community members. I think that we can strategically use their engagement in the superintendent process as part of building trust. And I think that will take time. And I also think, Dr. Avosa, that we have an opportunity as a board, as per our conversation earlier today, to continue to do really intentional work with the board in team building and trust building, so that when the new superintendent comes, whoever this person is, we've done the hard work around building trust. It's not here yet. It's not. But I think these are starts, and having these conversations are important, but that will take time. So I don't wanna rush the process, but I do wanna be really intentional about moving forward and moving in a way that we're using strategically the firm to help support building trust. We're working together, building team, building trust. You're keeping us, the train on the track, and making sure that we're, the system and the board, I do believe and I see and I feel that there is a difference in that. The community feels it, your principals feel it, that's there, I think that's good. So I think there's some things that we have to work on and just taking our time in the process. I just don't want to feel like we have to rush and like we have to have someone by August 1st. I mean, it would be nice, but it would be nice,
I agree.
but,
Your perspective,
so I'm just supporting,
because I like.
that was my answer.
Because you guys were here in the last
Oh,
cycle.
my perspective
So-
was,
He just
yeah.
So from 5 years ago versus now.
Oh, yeah, no, we definitely we need a more robust process than we had before. There's no doubt about that. No knock on our partners, but we needed more.
I mean, we trusted them
And
to
maybe,
do
yeah,
everything.
and
We
maybe,
trusted them to
maybe
do
we
everything.
didn't ask, maybe it's on us for not asking the questions,
It
you know,
was.
and doing what we needed to do,
It was.
as we went through that process. So that part, because I really do think that we've got some pretty good ideas of where our, major buckets of emphasis fall. And so we're going to need to see, I'm gonna need to see, let me speak for myself, I'm gonna need to see success, demonstrated success in those areas to really get behind a candidate. And so, and that's, you know, that's our multilingual, that's our special ed, and I even throw in gifted too, because I think in terms of sort of not ending up in many discussions, they don't, and yet they do need the resource if we're gonna help them have their full opportunity as well, right? So from my perspective, I believe that any of the three groups that we could have picked is gonna be a step up in robustness over what we did
Absolutely.
4 years ago. So from that perspective, at the same time, I really, while we've settled on one, I don't want to jump until it makes sense to jump, right? So
When to start.
yes, so when's the time to, and even, I would even throw out that there might be some things that we can do contractually even in an advancement or preparation that we put in place that still doesn't trigger the full search until the appropriate time. And again,
Good point, working on this. Yeah.
I'm just, so anyway, that's kind of my perspective, because,
I think we should start the process with the search firm. I think the search firm can strategically work with
The team.
Dr. Avosa, KQ Communications, work with them, and we start to engage in a process of working with the community, because that's going to take, if we want to do it in a way that's really intentional, in smaller groups, more like, but maybe it would be looking at their plan too, like maybe when we start is dependent on how we see their plan. But my understanding was in the interview process that it looked like they had a longer engagement time around smaller groups, and I'm interested in starting that and that process instead of, wait,
right.
I think we can do
One
it
of-
all
one of the things that
strategically.
they shared in my interview was that the Alma Group specializes in recruitment, right? So I feel confident in their expertise around the recruitment process.
Yeah.
I know in what Mr. Gomez, you shared needing to have a meeting to finalize the terms of the contract. I'm really interested in us hearing from the Alma Group around what does this timeline look like from their perspective, from your lens of expertise. I would like to hear from them
Yeah.
around what their recommendation is. Thinking about when are we gonna get the best candidate pool? Thinking about, when are families gonna be most engaged? Because they're the ones that put it on my mind that you're probably not gonna get the engagement you want in the summer. I wasn't thinking about that, so I want to lean on their expertise to help us to finalize the timeline, right? If we maybe work backwards, if we know do we wanna identify someone in January? I don't know if that's what we wanna do. Maybe Alma Group can say, hey, you'll have a better candidate pool if you aim for July. Like, I want to lean on their expertise there as much as possible. And I just feel like we can plan the timeline backwards, but I feel like we
I
need to do
agree.
that in collaboration with the
them.
Alma Group.
I agree.
Smart.
Yep,
Fine.
yep.
They'll
I
give you
agree.
the best scenario, they create a pathway. Usually they'll have like 3 pathways, it's the 3-month expedited, it's the 6-month, and then it's the 9-month. And you don't wanna start too early in some communities with big things because it fizzles. You don't wanna start too late, cause then people feel like you're rushing the process. So I think that's wise, to let them show you what they typically do and think is best practice.
Yep.
Because we can always, again, my thought was, there might be some things we wanna do in advance that are quote-unquote supplemental, and maybe we start with a contractual piece there.
Yeah.
That then, again, gives them a head start, but isn't necessarily, because of that, maybe we do want the 6-month, but to feel like between now and the 6-month of advance of the hire, we do a few research type related things to just get a feel for what we think we're gonna experience. I'm just thinking a little outside the box, but.
So I wanna make sure.
I like them coming up with a timeline, and then we can go back from there.
I wanna make sure I understood correctly.
Yeah.
I think I heard that I have the authority to take step 1, which is notification of the firms. And I have authority for step 2, and Dr. Simmons, I'm looking at you because we work together with you as the point for the firms. So I was gonna use that same model where I would work with Alma to set up through you time for the first initial meeting. Do I have the authority to take those 2 steps?
So I want to
Including
get
in that
clarity
meeting,
from
please,
the
Vice
team,
Chair.
right? Are we wanting this to be a special call meeting where the Alma Group is meeting with us all at once? Did you like the 2, or 1 or 2 touch points, 2 board members, 1 board member? Because we can then do virtual. I want to get a sense of what's gonna work best for us.
I think them meeting with all of us would be, maybe a longer meeting, it's an hour, but I do think there could be some value in that. I also think that, we had a 3-2 vote, and I think coming in with that could be interesting, and I think maybe making sure that we're level setting around all of us being on the same page, unified and moving forward with them, and I think demonstrating that with all of us being together as a team, I think would be really impactful for them to see that even though it was the vote the way it was, all 5 of us together are unified and moving forward. We're trying to figure out a way to really work with the firm. That's just my suggestion.
I think that's understood.
I'm gonna make
Right.
Yeah, I'm
one
gonna mention
point.
something.
You all are gonna have a lot of different perspectives based on your own personal experiences. 2 of you have already gone through a search, right? 3 of you have not. I recommend that you meet with the Alma group in small groups first, get all your questions out, you'll have a lot more time to think. Then you do the big one where everybody has an opportunity, even the public, which they should, watch and hear what they recommend. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That way the most of the nuance gets answered in those small groups.
And let me just put your fears at ease. I may lose a vote, but that does not change my goal to do the absolute best thing from this moment forward for this school district, ever, ever. I don't care, I can lose it completely, but the next day, I am focused on what is the next best step for this school district.
I appreciate you saying
I echo
that.
comment.
I hope you didn't think that I was saying that you didn't care. I just saying that you didn't vote for them,
Right.
and I'm just saying.
But I'm not gonna
it is
say,
what
because
it
I
is.
didn't
You
agree,
don't
I'm not
have
gonna
to, I mean,
sabotage, right? I mean,
no,
that's-
you wouldn't,
no. But I'm just saying that kind of was kind of the feeling, so I just
Well,
wanna
I
say.
just can't wait, literally,
Hey,
Another thing, come on now, I was literally condensing saying that the fact of the matter is we had different votes, and we just, as a unified front, it would be great for us all to be together. That was what I was suggesting, it had nothing to do with you like sabotaging or not. I think all of us have voted differently, and even though we may have our disagreements, we move forward, we're moving forward. We may not like that we voted differently, but it is what it is, we move forward. I think we've all demonstrated the capacity to do that. Mr. Gatsby, you want to say something?
Other than just, I echo everything Mr. Peterson said. I mean, yeah, it wasn't my first choice, but my commitment is to sit together and ask the right questions that are gonna get us to an effective outcome of an excellent superintendent. That's what this will be agreed to and committed to this morning.
Okay, so we're gonna go with smaller group, is everybody okay
Yep.
with the smaller group meetings?
First.
What timeline do you have in mind for me to set up that first meeting?
So what,
Mid-June.
yeah, I was gonna say no later than the end of June, I
Yeah,
know people are
mid-June.
busy, but if we can get that meeting finalized before the end of next month.
Okay. We will send out a survey, see what dates we can capture, and take it from there.
Yeah, because we have graduations, we got leadership, we got
Yeah, it's a lot
GSBA
going on.
conference.
Memorial Day.
Just a few things.
Yeah.
And that's between now and the first week of June. That's
And I think maybe what would be helpful is the way,
Do you need anything else from us?
No, ma'am, do you need anything else from me? I wanna make sure I know we're in whole.
$100 million would be great.
Okay, coming. I'll get
I
right on that.
I think what would be helpful is how we've, done before, is sending out availability, schedule for our team and seeing, when people are available to meet. Especially since we're meeting in small groups, we don't know who those groups will be until we know their availability. So in terms of scheduling logistically, maybe getting a pulse on availability,
Yes.
and then seeing where the synergies are around the two people who can meet.
Second.
And then doing.
And as a reminder.
Oh,
not that-
Zoom or in person, I'm okay with Zoom or in person.
I'm just gonna set it up Zoom.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
They're not in town.
I would just put this last reminder, as I know the firm has the capacity, also remember that firm is currently involved in one or two other superintendent searches. So we also have to check their availability, just wanted to put it
Sounds
out there.
good. Okay, thank you.
All right, so
Dr. Taylor's on that.
we padded that time, so we're back on time. So we padded a little bit of extra time in those two segments. I didn't think it was gonna take the full hour. Of course, if you have, additional thoughts or things that you really want us to attend to, feel free to, let me know. We're gonna try to put the update on the website, within. So the last segment is, on the policy for the, charter, committee charter. Yeah, and so, David and George are gonna facilitate that, but we are actually 5 minutes ahead of when this.
Do y'all want a break? Do we need a
Yeah.
break?
So I'll begin talking, just to give David a chance to prepare and set up, if that's okay, are we doing a 5-minute break?
5 minutes break.
5 minute.
5 minute break.